That looks about right. So, good morning. Thank you very much for joining our webinar this morning, Video Marketing, Why It Works and How to Use It. So, we have got Spotler and we're joined today by Jon Mowat from Hurricane Media. Hi, Jon.
Good morning.
Sorry guys, just a little bit about your presenters this morning. My name is Jess. I'm the marketing manager here for SpotlerUK, and as I said, I'm joined by Jon Mowat, who is the founder at Hurricane Media, an award-winning video marketing agency. I will let Jon do a proper introduction for himself. Just a few housekeeping bits. We will try and stick to 45 minutes for the webinar, and we will have time at the end and hopefully time throughout each section to do a Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout the session, please pop them in the chat box or the question box on GoToWebinar, and we will get to those at the end of each section. We will be sending out a recording of the webinar and also a copy of the slides as well, hopefully this afternoon, so that should hit your inbox. Just a quick brief introduction about Spotler for those of you who don't know. We are part of a larger group at Spotler, and we focus on helping marketing teams and customer service teams succeed, increase their revenue and generate new leads and new business, and also provide a unique customer experience for their customers. So we focus on the entire journey from generating new business leads via website and email, all the way through tracking and converting into customers. So we've got an array of email platforms, website intelligence tools such as personalization and website tracking. We have got pop-ups, live chat, WhatsApp, messengers, and social media as well. So we really are offering a complete digital marketing platform, and most recently we've just brought on board a new CRM platform, which is really great. We're really excited about that, to move into that space. So I am now going to hand over to Jon, who is going to talk to us about video marketing.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for the introductions. Thanks for having me. I can't see anybody because I'm full screen. So please let me know, Jess, if anyone sends any messages, or if I can't be heard, just text me or something.
All good.
So it's very nice to meet everybody. So yeah, video marketing, 45 minutes. What is it? How do we do it well? So let's get started. Okay, why it works and how is it? So we all love video. You can tell video makes us all very happy. So much so, in fact, that nearly 60% of time on social will be spent watching video this year. Some bleak dystopian future of a bus full of people watching video, but it is the way it's going to go. The problem is, obviously, as marketers, we spend an awful lot of money spending it. I wish I got paid in cash, but there you go. We spend a lot of money on video, and we can spend an awful lot of our time. So all that leads to slightly unhappy marketers. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be putting you into marketing heaven. We're going to be giving you the skills that you need to understand how video works, and so you don't waste your time and you don't waste your money. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at why video works so well. So we're going to do a bit of sort of psychology around it, which is talking about the emotional drivers that make video work. We're going to give you some really simple models so that you can plan video more effectively in your content. And we're going to talk about how to actually make better content, looking at sort of how long things should be and little structures. Obviously, this is a massive topic. We've only got 45 minutes, so we're sort of skimming over the top, but the plan is that you go away with some really useful tools that you can use every day. So what is video marketing? Well, I'll just give you a little bit of a story. This is me with my kids, Spencer and Flo, and we have a camper van. And I've always wanted to take them on holiday, but the van was getting too small, and I couldn't see how it was going to fit us all. And then, lo and behold, into my Facebook feed, I got a video. And this video was for a thing called the Sky Camp. And the Sky Camp looks cool. It's basically a tent that sits on top of your vehicle. And suddenly I had this vision of us driving through the south of France with the van with the tent on and everybody having a nice time. I went onto Instagram and I watched more videos, of very aspirational videos of this product. And I thought, this is the one for me. But it's £3,000. So I didn't want to just spend this money randomly, I wanted to make sure it was good. So I went onto YouTube and I researched and I saw videos around the founder of this product and why he built it. And I watched things like durability tests of what this thing is like in high wind. And eventually I thought, I'm ready to buy this. And it was at this point that I actually found out that the Skycamp wasn't completely available yet. It was actually a Kickstarter. In order to get one, you had to be very much at the front of the Kickstarter queue. So I bid and I sat up at midnight and I sat up overnight ready to bid on this thing because it's based in America. And actually, I was the second person in the world to bid for a Skycamp, and I got one. But the really interesting thing was they needed £500,000 to get this Kickstarter off the go, and in 24 hours they got nearly 2.4 million views, $2.4 million. So there's me, there's my van, as you can see. And I now live I can go down in Devon and sleep in the van, everything like that. And then I get an email from them saying, hey, look, you wanna be one of these, right? What about, why don't you buy one of these? And so I now own one of those. And for me, this very much is what video marketing is around. They use video in the awareness stage via social to get my attention. Then during the consideration phase, they helped me make decisions. Then they drove conversion, and then they kept me retention. And the interesting thing was that they used actually emotions through all of this as well. They used aspiration at the beginning. There was a fear of loss. They overcame that fear of loss. Then they gave me a FOMO because they thought I might not get it. And then the sense of belonging to a community. So that's very much what video marketing is. It's about using multiple pieces of content. It's basically about driving brand growth with multiple pieces of content, targeting specific audiences across multiple platforms, right? So it's not just about making a video. It's about how we can use content to drive business growth. So that's what we're doing. We're talking about why it works so well and all those kind of things. But you might say, who am I? Why do I get to talk about these things? And why should you be listening? Well, in about 10 seconds, I'll be very quick. I run a thing called the Hurricane Group. We have 4 companies, a video marketing company, a social media agency, a pharma-specific brand company, and a Hurricane Global, which is film crews anywhere in the world. So we're currently filming in Japan and South America and all those kind of things. I've written 2 books on video marketing called very, very sexily Video Marketing. It's very imaginative. And it actually is, I was showing this at the end, but there's a discount code there and you can scan that QR code to find out more. Right, here we go. Let's get into the meat of it. Let's talk about why video works. Now, there's four very important ways why video on mobile phone works. Touch and hold, the fact it moves, targeting, and emotional stories. Now, we've only got 45 minutes, so I'm not going to give you the full book version. Instead, we're going to talk about the main one, which is video works because we can tell emotional stories. There's a really interesting thing that the emotion basically changes behavior. There's a couple of slides there I skipped because I'm aware of time. So we can tell really powerful emotional stories with video. And we can actually use that to change behavior because emotion does change behavior. Whenever we feel something, we change what we do. And what we're going to do now is we're going to spend 5-10 minutes digging into why emotion is so important in changing behavior. Because once we understand why it's important, we can then understand how we can use it in video so that we can drive our brands forward. So why does emotion change behavior? Well, basically, if we didn't have emotions and we didn't make decisions based on sort of gut feeling and how we feel, we'd never get anything done. We make about 227 decisions a day about food, and that is across everything. We make thousands of decisions. And if we were to treat every single decision about food in the same way as we do as getting a mortgage, for example, we'd never get anything done. So this is why we have developed what we call System 1, System 2 thinking. Now, you're all marketers here, and I suspect many of you will have heard System 1, System 2. Certainly there's an agency that's just renamed itself System 1, so it's very much part of the thing. But for those of you that are unaware, we have 2 parts to the way how we make decisions. System 1 is this subconscious decision making. It's where we make decisions quickly with little effort. We don't use much brain, we don't use much energy, and we don't have to think about it. System 1 is the kind of thing that if you step out in front of a car and you see a car coming, you can step back. You don't have time to think about it. You just need to get on. It's also how we decide if we like people instantly, first impressions. System 2, on the other hand, is where we make those conscious decisions based on conscious pondering of data. What kind of mortgage are we going to get? What do I want to do in my relationship? All these kind of thinkings. And obviously, the problem with system two is it requires a lot of glucose, a lot of thought, and ultimately, our brain doesn't particularly like doing it. But just as some examples of system one, you're driving along the road, you can kind of zone out a bit. We've all done that when you get to where you're going and you're not quite sure how you got there. But it's about quick decision making, it's unconscious. But then once you need to park a car in a tight space between a Mercedes and a Jaguar, suddenly it's about conscious decisions. It's a lot of thinking, complex decisions. Sorry. So that's our system one, system two. But what we've actually done is we've evolved to make much of our decision making automatically at low energy cost using system one, which is driven by emotions, that sort of base level thinking. So what we can do by appealing to system one, by dealing with emotional things that people react to rather than think about, we can actually drive behavior by appealing to that system one. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about why emotion is vital to that decision making. And the fact is, we can't actually make decisions without emotion. And it's a really interesting sort of piece here. But I don't know if any of you who did psychology either at GCSE or university, but you would have heard a lot about this chap called Phidias Gage. And Phidias Gage is actually looked at in Antonio Damasio's book called Descartes' Error. And it's just a really interesting case study that's worth talking around. So Phidias Gage was around in 1800s, 1845, he died eventually. He worked on the railways. And he worked with large metal spikes. And one day he had a very bad day at the office, and one of these spikes actually went right the way through his head, which wasn't the best day for him. And unbelievably, he actually survived. They pulled the spike out of his head. He went down to the doctors, who didn't believe this had happened until he looked up and saw a big sort of hole in his brain. And what actually had happened is it had gone through the left prefrontal cortex, and it completely damaged the prefrontal cortex. And this gave scientists or psychologists a really interesting example to see what happens when we lose the left prefrontal cortex. And basically, amongst other things, he became slightly irritable and lots of other things, but Phidias became unable to make decisions. And it's really interesting that actually we now know that the left prefrontal cortex deals with emotions. So he lost the part of the brain that could deal with emotions, and lo and behold, he couldn't make any decisions. So we could show that emotion is vital to decision making. We just can't do it without it. And I can dig a lot deeper into that, but it's quite a nice, interesting one to see. So what we're going to do now, a little tester, really. I just want to show you what happens when we feel emotions and how we can change our behavior. So what I want you to do is just take a moment to think, how do I feel right now? It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I think it's on a Tuesday. How am I feeling? What we're going to do is we're going to watch a video, and then we're going to come back and we're going to see how we feel. Well, there we go. So interesting. How are we all feeling now? It's very much changed perceptions, and that was really 92 seconds to change your mood. And we went from, oh, this is bright and breezy, to something which elicited an emotional response. And what was that emotional response? Well, I would say it's probably distress, empathy, some kind of understanding of what this child is going through at this point. But what is distress and empathy, and what are these emotions, and more importantly, why do they happen, and how can we use these emotions to change behavior? Well, what happened when you watched that film was you got a big kick of brain chemicals, cortisol, oxytocin, dopamine, GABA, adrenaline, like loads of different things happen when you watch a video. Specifically in this video, you would have got a kick of cortisol and oxytocin. This has been studied really well by a chap called Dr. Paul Zak, who did a really interesting piece of work called Empathy, Neurochemistry, and the Dramatic Arc. And what he did is he basically showed a really emotive video to people. I can't show it because it's about a young boy that's dying of cancer, and his dad can't bear to be with him. It's a really powerful story. It's a bit too much for a Tuesday morning. Anyway, what Paul Zak did was he tested blood chemistries before and after, and he measured not only what happened to people's blood chemistry, but then what it did to their decision making. And actually, what we can do is we can actually hear from Dr. Zak himself about what they discovered.
We began doing other studies on this story. So we took blood before and after, and we found that the brain produced two interesting chemicals. One is called cortisol, which focuses our attention on something important. So cortisol correlated with our sense of distress. So the more distress you felt, the more cortisol you released, and the more you paid attention to that stimulus. The second chemical release is called oxytocin, which is associated with care and connection and empathy. And oxytocin was correlated with people's sense of empathy. And the more oxytocin they released, the more empathic they felt towards Ben and his father. And we did something different after this experiment. We gave individuals a chance to share money with a stranger in the lab. And indeed, those who produced both cortisol and oxytocin were more likely to donate money generously to a stranger they couldn't see in the lab. In another experiment, we gave individuals a chance to donate money to a charity that works with children who are ill. And indeed, those who released oxytocin and cortisol donated money to this charity. In fact, the amount of oxytocin release predicted in both cases how much money people would share with a stranger or with charity. What we're seeing is that this narrative is changing behavior by changing our brain chemistry.
And I think that's the point for me. The point is it's about changing behavior by changing brain chemistry. That is what we as marketers, when we make content, should be trying to do. Connect with people emotionally, make them feel something, and lo and behold, change their behavior. So we're looking to make emotional connections, we're looking to tell powerful brand stories, and we're looking to change behaviors. But what does that actually mean? Well, okay, let's bring this down from talking about child marriage and slavery and all these very emotional things to every day. Like, we're marketers, we sell products. How can we use this? Well, at Hurricane, what we do, we talk about these things called emotional drivers. And an emotional driver for us is the thing that people really actually care about your product. And it's not like, oh, it saves you money or it's got these features or these benefits. It's like, why do you care? So the way to think about it is to think about all the emotions that are pretty much available in the world. It might be that we're able to make people feel energetic or excited about our product. It might be that actually what we do is we drill down into sort of making people feel scared or insecure or this kind of FOMO type thing. Or we could make them feel really happy, the Coca-Cola approach, make them feel joyful and curious and happy. So there is always an emotional driver. So the question I always pose when we are making any kind of film, whether this be a short form 15-second or a long form documentary, are what are the emotional drivers for your brand? What is the thing that people care? And very often what happens at this point is people say, well, I'm in a service industry, or I do B2B marketing. People don't feel emotion about my content. And the answer is there's always something. For example, you might be able to save people some time so they can get home and see their kids. That is a massively emotional driver. It might be that you can help them up the career ladder by choosing the right thing. And this is an example that I always show in these circumstances, which is no disrespect to Talia, but they are slightly dull in terms of what they sell. They sell electronic invoicing software. And they've got a little film here, which, it's a bit of fun. It's a bit silly. But what it does is it taps into possibly the only real reason that you might use electronic invoicing software, which is, well, we'll see now.
When you don't invoice electronically, you spend time manually inputting your invoices. When you spend time manually inputting your invoices, you get a repetitive stress injury. When you get a repetitive stress injury, you ask for time off work. When you ask for time off work, the intern fills in. When the intern fills in, he does a better job than you. When he does a better job than you, he gets offered a job. And when he gets offered a job, he becomes your boss. Don't let the intern become your boss. Allow suppliers to submit free electronic invoices through Talia.
So look, it's a bit silly, it's a bit of fun, but there is always an emotional driver. So we're gonna talk about that. So before we go into more structures and things like that, are there Jess, was there any questions around emotion, or should we just crack on? What do you think?
I have had one come in.
Okay, wicked.
Are there any pieces of content which don't need an emotional driver out where it won't work?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so where might it not work or whatever? So yeah, it's a really interesting point, because I think if you're doing a 60-second or a 90-second, then we need to make some kind of connection. Otherwise, why would people listen? I think the only thing that you might say is, do we have time in a 15-second TikTok or something like that? And I think then the piece of content is the emotion. With a piece of TikTok, we might make people feel happy, or we might make them laugh. But if we just hit them with a service, okay, it's a bit of an advert, but it doesn't really make any difference. We're working with Avanti Rail at the moment on a TikTok thing, and the emotion we're choosing there is sort of saving money and being thrifty and getting to explore more places because of it. So there is always something. There's always something. But that's a good question. I don't think I can think of any reason why we wouldn't have some kind of emotional connection in every piece of content, even if it's just understanding what it is that people might be motivated by. So that's a good one. Cool. Okay, so we've just talked about.
I've had a few more come in. Do you want to take
cool,
them now?
Cool. Yeah. Let's do them. Yeah.
So this one, are there any ways besides connecting with the audience and customers emotionally? Any other ways?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a massive conversation, like how does advertising work and all these kind of things. I think it depends on what you're trying to do differently. However, when I'm talking about effective content, I'm talking about changing behavior with emotion. But you could flip that slide and you could say, if nobody knows who you are in the market, maybe we should just drill down on being distinctive. So any of you that are into Byron Sharp, or are into the long and the short of it, or Binet and Field, or all these kind of, the big sort of thinkers on contemporary marketing, the big thing is, don't worry about being different, be distinctive. So it might be that you say, look, we're not going to make any strong emotional connection with this. We're just going to stand out in the market. And it's odd that's a good question, because actually Hurricane as a company, we're doing a LinkedIn advert at the moment, which is just a massive H in the middle of the screen. And we're just drumming that H. You can see top left there, we've got the H with the sort of dots on it. And we're just really being distinctive. Now, the thing is with that, it doesn't necessarily drive behavior in itself, but it makes you well known in the marketplace, and then you can do it there. So in that circumstance, you don't need emotion, but you've got to know what you're doing, right? So that's a very good question, and I could keep going with that for days. So I'm happy to answer that question more later.
Couple more.
Yeah.
What sort of kit is this stuff shot on? Are we talking iPhones or full Canon or Nikon kit? How much might full kit
Good
cost?
question. Right. So we as a company shoot £100,000 TV commercials and £500 TikToks, right? It doesn't. I think what I'm talking about here is governing principles. The most important thing for me is understanding strategically what you're trying to do, and we're going to move more into sort of models later. But who am I talking to? What am I going to connect with emotionally? Am I trying to be distinct? What's the plan? And I'll talk about that more. Actually, it doesn't matter what you're filming on if you've done that. But, I think probably the advert that you just saw for Talia, that looks like it was shot on a DSLR, but we shoot on everything. So I think for me personally, strategically, what are you trying to achieve with this? What are your goals? And then from there, you can scale budget accordingly, right? So,
Mhm.
but again, I'm happy to chat more about production levels. I think production levels are really interesting because TikTok is driving them down, whereas other channels like TV commercials are staying just as high as they were. So it's about where you are. If you're doing TikTok, don't shoot on anything shiny because it's not authentic to the platform. It's all about shooting on phones, which is depressing for a production company. But there you go. It's the truth.
Yeah. Last one for this section, then I think.
Yeah.
So, what's the best approach when you have two very different audiences for the same service where their emotions would be different?
Ah, that is such a wicked question. Okay, so normally in a conference, I'm waving around a spork at this point, and a spork is a spoon and a fork. It's one of those camping things. And to be honest, it's a shit spoon as a shit fork. It's like if you have a tool, much better to have a tool that is designed for the job. So if I had two different audiences, I would be looking, if you can, to have two different pieces of content for those. Because if you're reaching them through paid ads, you're going to be targeting separately. The majority of the advert can be the same, but if somebody's looking to save time because they want to go home, that's very different from, I don't know, someone who's driven by wanting to save the planet. So it depends on how closely aligned they are. You can have two emotional drivers in the beginning if you've got two audiences, but again, it won't be as effective as saying less. So say less, be really precise. Is better, because the problem is if you go, okay, we want this to work for every audience in every market and whatever, you just end up as a not very effective thing. What I would suggest is do one campaign at one market, see how it goes, and then do another campaign at the other market. And I think you'll be so much more successful than just a spork, basically. So that's a really good question. Really good question.
Split
These are
test.
the nuances of the day. So that's brilliant. Shall I keep going then?
That's all for now. So
Yeah.
yes,
All right, cool.
continue.
So what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you some models to help in planning, right? So understanding how I think about the content funnel, and then how I think about video types. So I'm just keeping an eye on time. This is probably 10, 15 minutes, so we'll get into this. And the idea being, going back to the question about production levels, it's about planning and understanding where you're going to go. So traditional sales funnel, you put mass media at the top. I eventually you filter this down and you get a sale at the bottom. And this is so irrelevant to everybody in sales at the moment. I think there's no point looking at that. For me, the digital content funnel is much more like this. I can't use a highlighter, but you can basically see that at the top, if you have the budget for TV, you still have quite a wide sort of space at the top. However, for most people, we can't advertise on television, so really, it's a bit of a narrower top actually. So at the very top of the funnel, we have what we call the awareness phase. And this is where we're using targeted adverts, we're using SEO, we're trying to capture a small amount of people into our content funnel for the sake of argument. At this stage, we're like an advertiser, right? The content is paid for, we're being shoved into people's faces, people aren't choosing it, it's irregular, it's brandy, it's kind of TV, it's like commercially. Um, the next thing that happens is as we move through the funnel, there's this big bulge in the middle where people are in the consideration phase, and people might be here for a day, a month, 2 years, 3 years, depending on what it is. And we need to make sure that we have content for them that answers their questions in this phase. So going back to my initial sort of thing about the tent, this is the YouTube videos about how does it work, all those things. Because at this stage, we're a publisher, right? We're not an advertiser anymore because people are choosing to watch it. It needs to be valuable, it needs to be regular, and we need to really have bits of content that answer those problems. Then we get to the bottom of the sales funnel and we're in action mode, right? This is where we become a salesperson. This is where we are using FOMO or discount codes and really sort of paid ads. And then this is like buy now, get 25% off, all those kind of conversion things. So the key to, I think, all kind of video content, no matter what we're making, is like, where is your problem? Have we got an awareness problem in that nobody knows who we are? Have we got a problem that everybody knows who we are, but they're not converting, so we're not explaining our story enough? Or is it people know who we are, we're telling our story well, but they're just not taking that final leap into action? right? So this is the way I think of the sales funnel. And obviously everyone has got a different model, but specifically for me, this is a really good way of thinking about video. And again, there's my famous spork, right? I think as soon as you go, I'm going to make one piece of content which is going to drive awareness, it's going to answer all the questions, and it's going to drive action to buy, you become a spork. You become nothing for all of them. So it's about really planning more pieces of content for more specific purposes. Okay, so that's a really, I don't need to drill too much into content funnel. But now that we understand like how we think about where are we in the sales funnel, we can understand a model to decide what type of videos we need. So I call this the content tree, and bear with me while we just go through. So, we're all marketers. You probably over the last 14 years, 9 years, I think it is, the Hero Hub Help model. This was created by YouTube, and it was to help creators to work with brands. And they came up with, let's make hero content, hub content, help content. It's 9 years old. It has some serious problems in that it doesn't really do anything. So, sorry, I'll go back to that. I'll just go back to that. Oh, I can't go backwards. I can. There we go. Sorry. It's 9 years old. It's definitely got some limitations. So what I've done is I've taken the Hero Hub Help model, and I've very much adapted it and brought it up to speed so it works across all channels rather than just YouTube. And it's a really good way of structuring how we think about content. So this is how I think about mapping content. I call it the content tree because it looks like a tree, right? At the top, we have hero content, then hub, then help, then volume, and then go. And this is a webinar. So obviously this now becomes the structure by which I can talk you through it. So let's start at the top. Hero content, high impact content, which introduces your business to a large new audience, right? This is commercials. This is 15-second paid ads. It's 30-second paid ads. It's viral ads or viral ads, all that sort of stuff. If we look at what a hero film is, this is where we really create emotional connections and we build brand saliency. This is where, if you think about Red Bull, where we had Felix Baumgartner, he jumps out of a thing in space. Nothing, loosely connected to, Fly Without Wings or whatever the tagline is. Very emotive, very heroic, very sort of big stuff, typically bigger budget, and you'd only have one or two a year, right? It's a big hero film. This is where you make that emotional connection. Then underneath that, we have hub content, and you have a bit more of this hub content, and it's regular and it's consistent. And the idea here is that rather than the big emotive stuff, you still make that connection emotionally at the beginning, but it's about generating brand awareness and trust with regular engaging content. Going back to the Red Bull example, if the first one was hero films, they've also done a series of like, what is it like to be a pro surfer, which starts sort of something that you're going to come back to every week. You really can build series. So outside of Red Bull, this might be a series. We did one for Costa where every week, a different type of coffee and the barista tells you how they made the coffee. So hub films is about building a hub of content, whether that be on Instagram or YouTube or your own website, so that people keep coming back. And this is where we build regular conversations with people. Underneath that, in the tree, we have help content, and this is massively underrated. But this isn't ensuring that we're answering questions. It's where you get found in search. It's really helpful because you get picked up in search. It shows you're a trusted leader. Putting money behind help is a really, really interesting thing. Like, we work for Calagas. They're an indispensable resource, and I think we've had like 500,000 organic views on like how to connect a barbecue and what kind of gas do I need, and it's a really good way of maintaining those kind of connections with people. If I was going to put my budget anywhere and I had limited budget, I would start with help films because they pick up on search. They show you're a trusted provider. They're a really good place to start. Now, this is where the YouTube model stops, because the YouTube model isn't interested in other social channels, and it's not interested in making people buy anything because it's only interested in people staying on YouTube. So I've introduced this volume idea, and volume content is about feeding the algorithms, because sometimes you just need to have a famous footballer or a famous racing driver shoveling marshmallows into the face, right? This is where TikTok comes in. This is where those social channels come in, and it's just campaign content that feeds the algorithm. It keeps up our posting velocity. We keep ourselves front of mind. It's just about brand recollection and all those kind of things. Doesn't have to be shiny, but you do need volume. And obviously, the whole point of volume is you have a lot of it. We've been working with Bupa just to make some meditations. So 8-minute meditations, super cost effective to make. It's just a voiceover record and some animations. And they're picking up really, really good search traffic because lots of people are stressed, and it really aligns with the Bupa thing. So this kind of, sometimes you just need to make volume. I won't go into that as well. Okay, so what we've done is we've made a connection with our hero content. We've kept people talking with the hub content. We've answered questions with help. We've kept the conversations alive with just massive volume, low budget stuff. And finally, we need to drive conversions. And we talk about go. And this is, I think, where a lot of people fail. They're not doing those final nudges. And this is where we do basically like buy nows and those kind of things. So just an example of this, we work with Shelter and we do TV commercials and we do all these kind of things. But at the end of the day, at some point, we need to retarget someone on paid social who's watched the other content, but they're just not making a donation. And this is an example of a classic Go film, 15 seconds. It's cut out of other stuff, and you can see why it's there.
I never envisaged that I could be living in the streets. Certainly wasn't when I was vulnerable, and I'm very thankful to Shelter. They were a big help to me. This Christmas, please donate to Shelter.
It's a straight donate ask. It's like, look, we haven't got time to talk to you about everything. It's a go piece of content. Give us your money. I won't show that one either. So there we go. That's my content tree. And it's, if you combine the content tree with the digital sales funnel, you can start to say, right, I've got a problem at the top of the funnel. People don't know who I am. So I'm going to make a hero film so I get found. And I'm going to make some help content so that I pick up on search. And that sorts out the top of the funnel. Equally, at the bottom of the funnel, everyone knows who we are, but no one's converting. Right, I'm going to put out a bunch of retargeted Go content, which just drives conversion. So the reason I show both of these models is because when you start using them both together, you can start making a content plan that, okay, I'm starting to solve active business problems. Does anybody have any questions on content types or like the idea of like how we might start mapping various pieces of content across the funnel?
We have had one come through about YouTube. Does video
Yep.
on YouTube have to be high quality?
No, not at all. No. Okay. It depends on what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. That's such a massive question. I'm going to try and give you a short-ish answer. If you're doing YouTube Shorts and you're doing volume, it doesn't have to be quote unquote quality, right? Because it's about noise, volume. It needs to be funny. It needs to stand out. If you're doing long form, you need quality storytelling. It needs to be engaging. And the metric there is engagement rates. So without banging on about my own work, but it's just a useful case study. We've just done a series of documentaries for Bupa going around the world telling the story of climate change and health, right? They're 6 to 7 minutes long. They are high quality, really well told stories, beautiful to look at. And they're getting completion rates of 70, 80%. They're getting engagement rates that are through the roof. And what happens then is because they're getting good engagement and getting good views, the YouTube algorithm goes, this is good content that's keeping people watching. I'm going to recommend this to other people. So it depends on what you mean by quality. They don't have to be shiny camera work, but if your metric of quality is, do people keep watching because it's either entertaining or useful, then yes, it does have to be high quality. I think we get concerned about quality being about visuals, and look, if it looks a bit crap, people aren't going to watch it, but you don't equally need to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds. But in terms of measuring quality, the most key metric is engagement rate, because if you think it's not great quality, but you're getting an engagement rate of 80% and people are watching all the way through, that's good enough, right? So that's a great question.
Yeah. One more on this section. We are B2B business working in the pharma sector. Our target audience don't engage on social media apart from LinkedIn. Is paid media still applicable? Should we invest in paid LinkedIn?
Oh,
Have a very limited budget.
love it. It was such a wicked question. We do loads of pharma, and we work with Pfizer and GSK and the other people like this. There is a new service which is programmatic, which allows you to get your adverts in front of HCPs, healthcare professionals for non-medical people, on like newspapers and stuff. But that's only just coming through. I have had great success reaching American surgeons in neurosurgery on LinkedIn. And if the person who's asked that question wants some examples, I can do it. It depends on who you're trying to reach, right? If you're trying to reach surgeons, you can reach them on LinkedIn if you've got good content. It's definitely worth a try because I've had some success with it before. What we've found is that pharmaceuticals don't have good results with email campaigns, but we've had some good success with paid social. You don't need a lot of money to do it because actually, if you think about it, you're not in pharmaceuticals. We don't have a massive audience, so your cost per click might be high, right? It might be 50 quid, it might be 60 quid. But the benefits of reaching those audiences are so high, and you don't need to reach that many people. So yeah, it's definitely worth exploring. Keep it short, keep it emotive, and I'm happy to share examples of success stories with that person. No problem.
Great.
Good
Couple more.
questions, team. Good questions. Yeah.
Do you storyboard campaigns before filming? What's the process behind the filming?
Yeah. We don't necessarily storyboard. It depends on what it is. The process for me is we have a kickoff meeting where we discuss what we're trying to solve. So where in the sales funnel are we? Are we top, middle, bottom of the sales funnel? Then we have a conversation around what kind of content we're going to make to solve that problem. Is it hero, hub, help, go, volume, whatever? Then if it's question based, we'll talk about what the emotional driver is at the beginning. We'll have a workshop around why do people actually care? Like that's the big question. What can we say in the first 5 seconds that they're going to care about? And that might be storyboarded or it might be written down in a running order, but it's definitely agreed on. In the first 10 seconds of this film, we're going to go A, B, C, D, and people will care. And actually, then we move into I've got a structure to talk about in terms of how we put videos together. But yeah, so we do the kickoff, we do the messaging, we figure out what kind of content, then we always do a storyboard because you need to go into the filming knowing exactly what you want out the other end. You cannot just film a bunch of stuff, try and put it together in the edit because you're going to come out with something that's beige and grey and doesn't really know what it's trying to achieve. So I mean, I don't want to plug the book horribly, but like literally I've answered that exact question in several chapters in the book, and it breaks down all the different stages that you need to go through, the planning and activation and all that sort of stuff. So the answers are definitely there, but storyboard it for sure. Otherwise you're wasting your time or running order anyway, if not.
Okay.
So
Couple
good questions.
more?
And yeah. I'm aware of time. But equally the questions are good, right?
Yeah, this is a good one. How would you
Okay. Oh
tackle
God, I'm worried now.
how would you tackle the ever-changing algorithm changes on social media trends?
Okay, well, you've nailed it. It's ever changing. It's about you're at war with the algorithm, right? So it's about understanding what the algorithms are doing. There's two things, right? Firstly, me as a professional, I watch lots of nerdy stuff online, YouTube videos about the nuances of algorithms, and what cheats are working, like how quickly do we need to talk, and all these kind of things. And you can go down a rabbit hole for that, right? But the main thing is to understand that there's a much more sort of top level understanding of it. What the algorithms want is they want to find content that is going to keep people watching as long as possible. So the only thing YouTube cares about is people staying on. It's dwell time, watch time. Total watch time is king. So if you can make content that's genuinely interesting, relevant to an audience, and they keep watching, it doesn't really matter what else the algorithm is doing unless you really want to nerd out. It's like regular, good, engaging content with a high engagement rate where people watch most of it will get you up the rankings. So if you've got a 6 minute, so what you can say is, does YouTube want somebody watching all of a 30-second film or half of a 10-minute film? Well, obviously they want half of a 10-minute film. So it's just if you can keep people watching, that's the best way to beat the algorithms. Other than that, just follow people on TikTok and YouTube who will give you all those little nerdy statistics. But you can keep chasing your tail on that a little bit, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Good question.
One more.
Yeah.
On this section. We are a firewood company that markets to B2B and B2C.
Yep.
What are your suggestions in terms of separating the two on social media?
Okay, so they go B2B and B2C. Well, it's a slightly different message for each audience, isn't it? Really. I mean, the B2C, I mean, I'm going to be really, but the B2C audience is what kind of atmosphere can I create in my home? How can I be with my family? How can I create an atmosphere where I'm warm and cozy? That would be the kind of emotional area I'd explore there. The B2B one, I need to think about more, probably about efficiencies and money and those kind of making your life easy. So how would I approach them? I would be saying separate them on the website, and so they've got two different streams of audience. But then in terms of social, LinkedIn obviously is how I would approach the business, but equally I'd be running probably Facebook for that audience. And then I would be running Instagram and TikTok and other things for the consumer market. I could think about more about that one if you want to get in touch, but you could definitely separate those two because they're such different markets, right? One is about home building and the other one's about efficiency, I think. But without knowing more, I'd have to dig into that.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Wicked.
That's
I
all.
don't feel I've answered some of those as well as I could do, but equally they're big questions. So just get in touch and
Yeah.
I'll give you some more answers.
Wow. Thank you.
Wicked. Okay, look, it's 10. We've got 13 minutes till the end of the session. So I think if we just go into some 2 tips, right? Making better content we've talked about here and duration. So this is a really useful tip about how we can build content, and I call it EFA, and it basically stands for emotion, fact, and action. And we've talked a lot about this, but you can pretty much take any piece of content and make it better by putting this structure on. And to the question earlier, do we need to storyboard it or put a running order in? This is almost the beginning of that running order. So when we do a messaging session, right, what we do is we get some post-its and we write the core message, like what are we trying to say? Why do people care, right? On a post-it, and we put that up on the wall. And then we get a bunch of other post-its, and we start with one that's titled emotion, one that's titled fact, and one that's titled action. And we get all the stakeholders in the room, and we go, right, what are the emotional drivers that people care about? Like, for example, firewood, we want people to be cozy. Medical, we want surgeons to feel that they're going to have a higher success rate, right? We're going to pander to their egos. This is where we put those emotional drivers. We put a load up. Then we put up a load of facts that we want to talk about the product. And that's normally where from across the business, you get these random things like, oh, we need to say that it saves this and it does that. You get hundreds of those. And at the end, we put up a list of actions that we want people to take. And we try and link those actions to the emotions at the beginning. Say, for example, if we were talking to surgeons and we were pandering to their egos to get higher success rates, the call to action would be, you can drive success rates if you use this. Anyway, so we end up with dozens and dozens of post-its on the wall, and we point back at the so what question, like what is the core thing? And with that in mind, we look at the core message and we go, is the stuff on the board relevant to the core thing we're trying to say? And we strip off all the emotional drivers that aren't relevant. We take out all the facts that aren't absolutely essential to the core thing, and we strip down to one call to action. And there we end up with our film. We've got one emotion at the beginning, we've got as few facts as we can, and we've got one call to action. And this is where you can get all the stakeholders in the room to agree that these are the most important facts and this is what we need to do. And that will just save you so much time. And I've just got an example of this. So this is a film that we made for Shelter. And you can see how at the beginning we've kind of got this emotional driver about everybody can. I'm just going to make sure which one. I'm going to show you this one, in fact, actually. So this is actually for Salvation Army. This is a guy who has been homeless since he was a kid, and we're trying to show that anybody can become homeless. You're never quite sure when it might happen. So we have an emotional connection at the beginning about Christmas and the fact that he's been homeless since he was a kid. Then we've got some facts about what the service is, and at the end you can see a really clear call to action. And it was interesting that we did a direct ask down the lens because it's so much more powerful. So let's just watch this.
Being on the street at Christmas, it can be devastating. The depression can really kick in. I became homeless when I was 15, and being a young man on the street at that age was really difficult. I was on a self-destruct course. I tried to kill myself every which way you can think of. That's why the Salvation Army, when they come forward, there was such a a glimmer of hope, because when you're on the street, you don't see a way out of any of it. They give me a home in the first place, so I got somewhere I could put my foot down, got an anchor, and to stop everything spinning out of control. And it was the hand that I needed to pull me out of the mud. Now the future holds whole different sort of prospects. My daughter's come back in my life. Although it's wide open, I owe it all up to them guys. The Salvation Army has helped me so much. Please make some donations to help them help other people.
So look, you can see really clearly, right? Emotion at the beginning, a fact about what specific services they offered, and action at the end. And that was their most successful piece of content last year, and I directed that one. So I'm always quite pleased to show that one. So that's EFA, right? So we now know how to make a better piece of content. And then in the last 9 minutes, let's just quickly talk about durations, because I always get asked, how long should a video be? And the answer fundamentally is between 15 seconds and 45 minutes, right? I know that's not very helpful at all. That's really not helpful at all, is it? But it's about understanding what we're trying to do. But what we can say is that less is more, right? I'm quickly going to explain this graph. We've got two films here. The green line is a 30-second long film, and you can see the engagement rate on the left. The blue line is a 60-second film. So if we look at the 30-second film, we start with 100% of viewers at 5 seconds, and by the time we get to 30 seconds, we've lost about half the audience, right? Now, if we look at the 60-second film, there's a massive drop-off in the first 5 seconds. It goes right down to half of the viewers have gone within 5 seconds, and then it tails off. And then we get to the end and we've got about 25% of the audience. Now, the interesting thing with these two films is the first 30 seconds of both of these films is exactly the same. It was a test done by Wistia. So why is the drop off so long for the 60-second if it's exactly if it's exactly the same as the 30-second one? And the answer is people simply are looking at it and going, I can't be bothered to watch 60 seconds. I'm not going to do it. Whereas when you've got a 30-second film, more people complete. So less is more. So when it comes to duration, if you can make it shorter, if you can get it from 3 minutes to 2 minutes, you're going to be much better off. There is counter to this, a sort of a thing about longer films equals more brand exposure, and I haven't got time to go into those. But fundamentally, if you wanted my top tip, less is more. Okay, so I'm going to skip through some of these other slides because we haven't got time for those, and they're very, very, very nerdy. So I'm just going to jump through to the end here. And just go, just to balance out the long and the short, there is now a drive towards short form. So lots of people are loving the short form. The metrics are driving us ever shorter. Yes, engagement rate is better if you have shorter, but equally on the counter side, TikTok's about to go to 15 minutes. Hilton just did a 10-minute long TikTok, which is one of the most successful TikToks ever. People will stay and they will watch if you do a really high quality or fun thing. So for me, it's about balancing lots of short content, but also having some longer form content that balances it out. So what does all this mean? Well, what it means basically is we need to drive behavior change with emotion. We need to understand why people care about your product, whether that's pharma or logs or any of those other things. We need to use the models for strong content plans, because that's how we're going to get effective content. And don't sell yourself too short. Do keep content as short as you can, but don't be afraid to go long form as well to balance all those out. Just before we go any further, before we go into Q&A, if you scan that, you can get my book, because my publisher gets very upset if I don't start plugging the book. There's a 20% discount there. I think we'll leave that up. Just before we go to Q&A, do you want to just say a few little bits?
Yes. So I just wanted to let everybody know.
Yeah, come on. Sorry.
Yes, yeah. Keep your questions coming in, guys, into the question box. We've got a couple to go through. Just wanted to say, for all of our listeners, we're offering a 14-day free trial of our website visitor identification platform. So you can actually identify the companies and the individuals visiting your website, what pages they're looking at, and what traffic, what medium source they've come from. So what marketing campaign they've come from, whether you're doing paid ads, email, social posts, anything like that. So it's really valuable piece of information for marketers, because we can prove the ROI of our budget. So if you are interested in that, please let us know, get in touch. Over to questions.
Yay, questions. I might just stop
So,
sharing my screen for the last 5 minutes.
yeah, we've only had one come in. So, guys, if you've got any just to cover the last 5 minutes, pop them in now. If not, you will have to direct them to Jon himself. So, last one, what kind of content can EFA be used for? Any limitations that we should know about?
Okay, cool. Good question. The EFA structure works with the long form documentaries, the 10 minutes. It works with your 30-second brand films. It works with your TV commercials. It works with pretty much everything. The only thing it doesn't really work with is high volume social media, right? If you're doing a bunch of TikTok posts and all those kind of things, you don't necessarily want to have that structure in it. Sorry, a light just went off. You don't necessarily want to have that in everything you do, but you can apply it to most video content, apart from the high volume social stuff.
Perfect.
Cool. Any more
What
coming in that time? There we go.
what type of video will work best for a very corporate research agency who mainly uses LinkedIn as a platform?
Okay. So many answers to that question. It really depends on what your business problem is, right? So if people haven't heard of you and you really just need brand awareness, I would be exploring a distinctive LinkedIn ad, social media post, something where you can reach your specific audience. However, in the B2B audience, what can work really well is webinars, is long form content. So I would be looking at, I would say, an approach where you're balancing something very short, 15 seconds, 25 seconds, establishing thought leadership, driving them to either a webinar or a longer form interview driven thing where you're going to be useful. It's all about being useful. So I'm just trying to think of some stuff that we're doing. We're working with actually some corporate clients doing just that at the moment. We're doing sort of 5 to 10 minute interviews, which are really deep dive into key topics, with some brand messages along the way, but then it's advertised with some very short paid ads. So that works quite well. Again,
Wow.
happy to have a chat offline about all these things because there's so many answers to that kind of question.
That is all. Thank you very much, Jon. That was
Wicked.
amazing. Really, really useful.
Pretty
And
nerdy, right?
yeah, but we're marketers. We love that, don't we?
Yeah, we love all that stuff. Cool. Okay, well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining, and thanks everybody for joining as well. As I said, we'll send a recording and the slides out this afternoon, and if you do have any questions, please get in touch. If you want to check out the free trial and also Jon's book, all the information will be on the slide deck.
Beautiful. Have a good day, everyone. Catch you soon.
Thanks very much, guys. Bye bye.
Bye.